Once you have inserted all the parts in an assembly file, all that remains is to put them together. In the open document, I have already inserted the parts of the assembly. Before I start putting them together, I will right-click on Part 1 from the Feature Manager design tree and I will select the Fix option. In this way, this part can't be moved or rotated. Next, I have to activate the Mate tool, which can be found in the Assembly ribbon. Once I do, the Property Manager palette activates automatically. The most commonly used mates are those that are included in the Standard tab. In addition, we usually use some mates from the Advanced tab. To begin with, I will place the second component on top of the first one, so its bottom face is tangent to the top face of the first component. To achieve that, I will go to the Advanced tab and I will activate the Profile Center mate type. This mate type center aligns the rectangular and circular profiles to each other and fully defines the components. With the Mate Selections field active, I will click on the top face of Part 1. Then I will click on the bottom face of the Part 2. Once I selected both faces, the mate was applied. Right below there is the Distance field. By setting a value in this field, the profiles will remain center aligned, but they will not be in contact. This means that you can set a distance between them. To understand better what I mean, I will type the number 10 in the Distance field and I will press Enter. Notice that Part 2 was moved lower. To change the direction, I will activate the Flip Dimension option, which can be found right below the Distance field. I can also change the direction of the alignment if I click on one of the orientation buttons. In this example, I will restore the part to its original position, and I will click on the checkmark to apply the mate. Next, I will place the Part 3. To do that, I will go to the Standard tab and I will activate the Coincident mate. This type positions the selected faces, edges and planes so they share the same infinite plane. You can also align axes to fully constrain the component. So I will orbit the view and I will click when the axis of the part appears. Then I will click on the corresponding axis of the Part 2. At this point, the component is still not in the right place. So one mate is not enough in this case to fully define the position of the component. I will click OK and I will try to move the component. Notice that the component can be moved forwards and backwards. To restrict the movement on the Z-axis, I will activate the Coincident mate type again. Then I will select the circular edge of the back side of the component and then the front face of the Part 2. I will click OK and notice that the component has been placed correctly. However, it can still be rotated. So again, I have to add another mate. So I will select the corresponding part's faces and I will add the Lock mate. Now the part is in the right position and it has no degrees of freedom. Now I will show you how I can place the second copy of the Part 3 more quickly. So I will activate the Coincident mate type again, I will orbit the view, and I will select the circular edge of the Part 3. Then I will select the circular edge of the front face of the part 2. I will click OK and notice that using only one mate, the component was placed in the right position and it can no longer be moved. However, it can still be rotated. So I will select the lock mate type to remove all the degrees of freedom from this part. So with the lock mate type active, I will select the part 3 and the part 2 to lock them. So as you can see, I can achieve the same result in different ways. The key in placing components is to think out loud which edge, surface or axis we want to coincide with what. So at this point, I will place the screws. At first, I want the bottom face of the screw head to coincide with the top face of the part 2. So I will activate the coincident mate type and I will click on the bottom face of the screw head and then on the top face of the part 2. Then I will click OK to apply the mate. Next, I want the circular edge of the hole on the top face of the part 2 to be concentric with the thread of the screw. So I will activate the concentric mate type and I will click on the top edge of the hole. Then I will select the circular edge of the screw head and notice that the screw is placed in the right position. Now back to the Property Manager palette, under the concentric mate, there is the lock rotation option. If I activate the lock rotation, then the screw won't be rotated. In this example, I will activate the lock rotation option and I will click OK to apply the mate. Notice that indeed I cannot rotate the screw. To place the second screw, I have to activate the mate tool again. I will use the coincident and concentric mate types again. However, this time I won't activate the lock rotation option. I will apply the mate and I will click OK to deactivate the mate tool. Notice that now I can rotate the second screw. To fix that, I will go to the Feature Manager Design Tree palette and I will expand the Mates category. Then I will right-click on the concentric mate and I will select the lock rotation option from the menu that appears. In the same way, I will place the rest of the screws. Before we finish the lesson, I should mention that before you start applying mates to the parts of an assembly, you should take a little time to think how the parts will be put together. So now you know how to place the components together to create an assembly.